The clock on the clinic wall ticked like a metronome for dread, each second stretching longer than the last. I sat in the doctor's waiting room, surrounded by the coughs of strangers and the smell of antiseptic. The kind of place where time feels still, heavy, waiting for news that might change your life. My name is Antonia Brooks, 71 years old, and until that afternoon, I believed the worst day of my life had already passed. Then my phone rang. It was my daughter, my only daughter. "Mom," said Angela, her voice clipped, unfamiliar, a coldness that made the fluorescent lights seem even harsher. "We're going on a trip to Europe tomorrow," she said. A pause. "I already sold your beach house and your car. We needed the money. Bye." And just like that, she hung up. No explanation, no apology, no hesitation. 40-5 years. 45 years of raising her, sacrificing every dream, every comfort, and she discarded me like a bill paid in full. The phone slid from my hand, hitting the linoleum with a dull crack. For a long time, I just stared at it, the same way you look at a coffin before it's lowered into the ground. But then, something strange happened. One didn't cry. For the first time in months, maybe in years, I felt a calmness, sharp and clear like glass, because my dear Angela didn't know everything. Flashback 6 months earlier, the morning Robert died, the last time I saw my husband. Robert, he was buttering my toast. He smiled at me, that quiet, steady smile that had anchored me for 45 years. He poured my coffee cream, no sugar, and kissed my forehead. "Good morning, my love," he said. And then, mid-sentence, he fell, just fell, the cup shattering on the kitchen floor. Coffee spreading like a dark halo around his body. That was the end. A heart attack, one breath too many, one heartbeat too few. Since that morning, I'd been moving through life like a ghost inside my own home, eating alone, sleeping on one side of the bed, folding towels for a man who would never use them again. Angela began visiting more often then, 3 times a week, like clockwork. She helped with groceries, accompanied me to the doctor, even sat through the funeral arrangements, offering soft smiles and gentle pats on my hand. "Mom, you need to take better care of yourself now that you're alone," she'd say. Her voice was surreptitious. Back then, I thought it was love. Now I realize it was preparation. Cut to present waiting room when she told me she'd sold everything, my beach house, my car, my memories. I should have felt rage, but instead, I felt clarity, because 3 days before Robert's heart stopped beating, he had given me a manila envelope. "Antonia," he'd said, his tone oddly serious, "put this away. If something happens to me, open it when you feel ready, not before." At the time, I thought it was just paperwork, another one of Robert's practical precautions. I tucked it into my dresser drawer and forgot about it. Until now, transition leaving the clinic, the nurse called my name. "The doctor said my health was surprisingly good for your age. He recommended rest and better nutrition." I nodded, smiled, and thanked him, but my thoughts were already miles away. I walked home slowly, the city's noise echoing through my head like static. No car, no beach house, no husband, no daughter. To anyone watching, I was just another old woman on the bus, clutching her purse, staring out the window, but inside, I was calculating, planning. Angela believed she had taken everything from me. She was wrong, because Robert had always been a man who planned ahead, far ahead. The discovery: Antonia's bedroom. Twilight. The house was quiet when I got home, too quiet. I went straight to the bedroom, opened the dresser drawer, and there it was, the manila envelope, sealed, slightly yellowed at the edges. On the front, in Robert's neat handwriting, "For Antonia. When you're ready." I sat on our bed, the same one where we'd shared a lifetime, and tore the seal. Inside were documents, thick official papers, and a folded letter. My heart pounded as I unfolded it. "My dear Antonia," the letter began, "if you're reading this, I'm no longer there to tell you how much I love you. Forgive me for keeping secrets, but I wanted to protect you from worry. Over the years, I invested our savings in properties and businesses. What you and Angela know is only the surface. Asterisk, asterisk," I read on, my hands trembling. "You are wealthy, my love. Far more than you realize. We own 6 additional properties, including the apartment building where Angela and Edward live. We hold shares in 3 companies. I've placed everything under a company name, Robert Investments, Inc., to keep it private. And you, my Antonia, are the sole heir." The room spun. I looked around at the old wallpaper, the family photos, the worn curtains, and for the first time, saw it all differently. I wasn't a poor widow. I was a hidden millionaire. Robert had done it, quietly, methodically, while I worried about grocery prices. He had built a safety net beneath the life we thought was fragile. And Angela had no idea. The second call the next morning, the phone rang again, her voice, falsely gentle this time. "Mom," she said, "we already transferred the money from the sale. We deposited your share into your account. It's not much, but it'll help you live for a few months while you look for something smaller." "My share?" I asked. "Yes, 30%. That's fair, right? Edward needs the rest for the business in Europe. We leave this afternoon." 30%, I repeated, my voice steady. How generous. She mistook my calm for forgiveness. "Oh, Mom, you've always been so understanding. We love you so much." And she hung up. I stared at the phone for a long time. Then I laughed. A deep, real laugh that startled even me, because she truly believed she'd won. Antonia's resolve. Later that day, I checked my account. The deposit was there, a pitiful fraction of what the beach house was worth. She and Edward had sold my husband's cherished truck to the one he washed every Sunday. Outside my window, I saw them loading their suitcases into a taxi, laughing, kissing, dreaming of Europe. Not a single glance back. That was fine. Let them leave. They were walking straight into their own storm. A visit to Mr. Peterson downtown law office the next morning. I took the bus downtown and walked into a marble-floored office with brass nameplates. Mr. Peterson, Robert's old lawyer, greeted me warmly. When I handed him the envelope and its contents, his eyebrows rose higher with every page. "Mrs. Brooks," he whispered, this is extraordinary. You're not just well off. You're one of the wealthiest clients I've ever had." Robert was brilliant. I leaned forward. "Mr. Peterson, what I need to know is this. What can I do legally?" He nodded. "Everything is in your name. And the sale of your beach house that was illegal. Angela had no authority. We can reverse it immediately and even press charges for fraud." I smiled. "No, Mr. Peterson. No police. No public scandal. Not yet. I want to do this differently." He studied me for a long moment. "Differently how?" "I want my daughter to think she's won, until she realizes she hasn't. I want to take back everything quietly, efficiently. But most of all, I want her to learn." Mr. Peterson nodded slowly, a small, almost admiring smile forming. "Then let's begin, Mrs. Brooks." Montage: The quiet war begins. Cue slow, cinematic music. Antonia walking through her quiet house, watering plants, smiling politely at neighbors who whisper. They pity her, the poor widow, abandoned by her daughter. She lets them, because behind the curtains, Mr. Peterson works relentlessly, reclaiming deeds, freezing accounts, transferring ownerships. Weeks pass. Angela sends no letters, no calls, but her name is being quietly erased from every document she touched. Antonia's reflection. Night kitchen table. The clock ticked past midnight. Robert's documents lay spread across the table like pieces of a chessboard. For 45 years, I had been a wife, a mother, a caretaker. Now, I was something else, a strategist. The city slept. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt alive. That night, I whispered into the silence, "Robert, my love, your plan worked. Our daughter thinks she took everything. But soon, she learned what she really lost." Outside, thunder rolled faintly over the horizon, the quiet promise of a coming storm. The day the beach house officially came back into my name, the neighborhood still thought I was broke. That was my favorite part. On the outside, nothing had changed. I still wore my old cardigan with the loose threads. I still walked to the corner store with my little canvas bag. I still sat on the porch in the late afternoons, waving to people as they passed. To them, I was just Antonia, poor, widowed, and abandoned. But I knew something they didn't. I was reclaiming my life, brick by brick, signature by signature. And the person who had tried to take everything from me was thousands of miles away, thinking she had won. Good. Let her celebrate in Europe. Let her think her mother was weak. This lesson would taste better. Cold. 1. The neighborhood widow. Antonia. "Dear, is it true?" Angela left and took the car. It was Aurora, my neighbor of 40 years. She'd come up to me while I was watering the plants in front of the house. She wore that look people wear when they want to help you, but are also secretly relieved they're not you. "Yes, she went to Europe with Edward," I said with a calm smile. "They have big plans." Aurora's eyebrows folded with pity. "And how are you going to live, sweetheart? We all know Robert didn't leave much." "If you only knew." "I'll manage," I said. God always provides. She touched my arm, soft and maternal. If you need anything, groceries, a ride, you come to me. Okay, I will. Thank you, Aurora. I watched her walk away, satisfied. The act was working. The town believed what Angela believed, that I was a lonely, discarded old woman. That image would protect me. Because no one suspects a poor widow of owning a 20-story apartment building, a beach house, 6 properties, and shares in 3 companies. No one suspects the quiet ones. 2. Peterson's call. It was a Wednesday when Mr. Peterson called. Mrs. Brooks, I have good news, he said, voice almost cheerful for a lawyer. We were able to nullify the sale of the beach house. The buyers were acting in good faith. They had no idea your daughter didn't have the right to sell, so we simply unwound the sale. Their money was refunded. The property is yours again. I closed my eyes. The little cream-colored house by the ocean. Robert's porch. Angela's teenage summers. Our barbecues, our Christmases. Our anniversaries. Mine again. Thank you, Mr. Peterson. And about the building where your daughter and her husband live. He added, that one is a bit more complicated. Technically, you've always been the owner through Robert Investments, but to get direct control, rental, rolls, evictions, association votes, we need to make some administrative changes. How long? 2 weeks, maybe less. Perfect. Do it quietly. Of course, and Mrs. Brooks. He hesitated. Do you still want your name off the record for now? Yes. I want everyone to believe I'm still at the mercy of my daughter. There was a pause on the line. May I ask why? I smiled, even though he couldn't see it, because some lessons can't be bought, Mr. Peterson. They have to be lived. 3. The house by the sea. A few days later, I decided to visit the beach house. I didn't drive, because, according to the world, I didn't have a car anymore. So I took the same bus Robert and I used to take when the truck was in the shop. I sat by the window, watching the city become highway, the highway become coastline. When the bus dropped me off, the sea breeze hit me like a memory. There it was, our house, small, cream-colored, wooden porch, slightly weathered by the salt, exactly as we left it. Except for a few potted plants the temporary owners had placed by the steps. I sat on the curb across the street and watched it for nearly an hour. In that porch, Robert had fallen asleep on Sundays, with the paper over his chest. In that kitchen, I'd fried fish while Angela, 15, brought friends over, and laughed at nothing. In that living room, we'd spent Christmas with fairy lights and beach sand stuck in the rug, and she sold it. Not because she hated it, but because, to her, it was just money. A man in his 60s walked out carrying a box. He saw me sitting there, clutching my handbag, eyes on the house. Excuse me, ma'am, he said kindly. Are you all right? Yes, I said, smiling, just remembering. You knew the previous owners? Yes, I said. Very well, he sighed. What a mess that was. They told us the elderly lady was very sick and needed to sell quickly. Then turns out the daughter didn't have the right to sell. We had to return the house. Did you deal with the lady? No, only with the daughter. She said her mother couldn't handle paperwork. He shook his head. Sad thing, to do that to your own mother. If you only knew. I thanked him and left before my expression gave me away. I wasn't angry anymore. I was resolved. Angela hadn't just sold a house. She had sold a story. She had told strangers I was weak, ill, unable to manage my own life. That hurt more than the money. For the power of attorney. That night, I called Mr. Peterson again. Mr. Peterson, one more thing. I want to get Robert's truck back. There was a pause. That will be harder, he admitted. Why? Because your daughter had power of attorney with your signature. I froze. My signature, yes. I checked. You signed it a few months after Robert's death. I remembered. Angela arriving with a folder. Mom, these are just some things to speed up the inheritance. You don't have to go anywhere. I'll handle it for you. I was in the worst stage of grief then. I signed anything she put in front of me. I was so tired. She tricked me. I said quietly. Legally, yes, but we can try to reverse it if we demonstrate deception. Or at least persuade the buyer to return the vehicle with compensation. Do it, I said. I want everything back. Everything. Everything. Silence. Then, yes, Mrs. Brooks. 5. Europe cracks. 3 weeks passed. I heard nothing from Angela. No photos. No we landed. No I miss you. But rumors traveled faster than airplanes. Aurora came sprinting to my gate one afternoon, breathless with news. Antonia, did you hear? Edward is in trouble with the bank. I put down my watering can. Oh, my brother-in-law works at one of the branches. He said Edward took out loans using the apartment as collateral, but the apartment isn't in his name. Now the bank is investigating. Oh dear, I said, playing innocent. And Angela? She didn't know anything. Aurora whispered like this was a telenovela. They say she's going to have to come back from Europe to fix it. I nodded slowly, hiding my satisfaction. Of course she would. Of course the fairy tale was going to end. Men like Edward always run out of money faster than they run out of charm. Poor thing, Aurora said. To be betrayed like that. Poor thing indeed. 6. The final piece is clicky. Few days later, Mr. Peterson called again. Mrs. Brooks, everything is done. You now have total control over all of your properties. And good news, we managed to recover Robert's truck. The buyer was someone I knew. When I explained the situation, he agreed to return it for a small compensation. I felt tears sting my eyes. That truck smelled like Robert. I knew it was silly, but grief isn't reasonable. Thank you, I whispered. One more thing, he said cautiously. About the building, now that you have direct control, you have the legal right to issue notices, evictions. Yes, good, I said, because I need you to send one, of course. Which tenant? My daughter. Silence. Mrs. Brooks, are you sure? She kicked me out of my house with a 2-minute phone call, I said, voice steady. Now it's her turn to learn how fragile roofs can be. We can send it to Europe. No, give it to the doorman, hand to tenant, upon return. I want her to come home first, thinking she still has one. Understood. 7. Angela Falsey didn't have to wait long. The next morning, at 7:30 a.m., the phone rang. It was Mr. Peterson. Mrs. Brooks, your daughter arrived at the airport this morning. Alone. Alone, yes. Word is, she and Edward fought. He stayed in Europe. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Did she receive the notice? I instructed the doorman to give it to her the moment she walked into the building. Very good, thank you. I hung up and went to make coffee. I set the table. I put 2 cups, out of habit. I imagined Angela's face as she read, Notice of termination of tenancy issued by Robert Investments, Inc. You are required to vacate the premises within 30 days. How poetic. The company her father had built. The company she didn't know existed. The company she could have inherited with time and love. Now evicting her. Justice doesn't always wear a judge's robe. Sometimes it arrives on letterhead. 8. The desperate callot. 8 o'clock a.m. sharp. The phone rang again. This time, frantic. Mom. I kept my voice warm. Good morning, honey. How was Europe? Mom, this is serious, she cried, near hysteria. I got a letter yesterday. I have to leave the apartment in 30 days. It's from a company I've never heard of, Robert Investments, Inc. Do you know it? I took a sip of coffee I'd prepared just for this call. No, never heard of it. Are you sure it's not a scam? That's what I thought. But I called the number, and it's real. They said the owner has decided to terminate the lease. Mom, I don't understand. We've lived there for years. Oh, honey, what a difficult situation, Mom. Her voice cracked. Can I come over? I don't have anyone else. There it was. The moment I had been building toward. Of course, Angela, this is your home. 9. Enter the fallen daughter. I prepared for her arrival like it was a performance, because it was. I wore my plain gray dress. I tied my hair in a simple bun. No jewelry, no sign of wealth. I wanted her to see exactly what she expected to see, the mother she thought she had left poor. When I opened the door, I almost didn't recognize her. Angela, my elegant, expensive, always put-together daughter, looked ruined. She'd lost weight. Her hair was pulled back carelessly. Her face was puffy from crying. Dark circles hollowed under her eyes. Her suitcase wheels bumped clumsily up my front steps. Mom, she said, voice small. I opened my arms. Come in, honey. She stepped into the house, looked around like she was remembering childhood, and for a second, just a second, she almost forgot she had betrayed me. I made coffee. She sat at the kitchen table, where I had read Robert's letter, the same kitchen where I had laughed at the absurdity of her first phone call. Mom, she said, eyes filling. I'm so sorry. It's in the past, I said softly. No, it's not, she said, voice breaking. I treated you horribly. I talked to you like you were nothing. I didn't even say goodbye. And now, Edward left me. He took the money. The business wasn't real. The banks are calling, and now, I don't even have a place to live. I let her cry. Not because I enjoyed it, because she needed to. Pain is sometimes the only door to humility. What happened with Edward? I asked, knowing exactly what had happened. He ran off, she said bitterly, with a hotel waitress. Mom, there was never a business. He just used me. He used us. I sold your house for him. I sold your truck. I used everything you and Dad built for him. I tilted my head. And what about me? Her eyes filled again. I used you to. There it was. Recognition. I could have embraced her and said, it's okay. Mothers forgive everything, but unconditional love without correction creates selfish children. So instead, I said, what are you going to do now? She looked at her hands, helpless. I was hoping I could stay here for a while, until I find a job. I paused just long enough to make it real. Of course, I said at last, this will always be your home. She broke into sobs and hugged me, desperate, clinging, like a drowning person finding a float. I hugged her back, but this time, there was calculation in it, because now she was in my house, under my roof, in my story. Now I could teach her. 10. Robert's second envelope. The very next day, when she went back to her apartment to bring the last of her things, she returned holding something that made my heart stop. Mom, she said, I found this. It was in one of Edward's boxes. It has your name on it. It was another manila envelope, smaller, newer, Robert's handwriting. I took it, keeping my expression neutral. What is it? Angela asked. I don't know. I lied. I opened it. Inside, a short note and a small key. Antonia, if you are reading this, it means Angela has fallen on hard times. This key opens safe deposit box 247 at the central bank. There is something there that can help you help her. Use it wisely. With eternal love, Robert. Angela's eyes widened. Dad had a safety deposit box. Why didn't he tell us? Your father kept many things to protect us, I said. He never wanted you to be tempted. Tempted by what? Money, I said plainly. Money can change people. Her cheeks flushed. Mom, can we go see what's inside? I looked at her, at the panic, the hope, the desperation for a shortcut. She still hadn't fully learned. Tomorrow, I said. We'll go tomorrow. 11. The box of jewels. The next day, at the central bank, we were led to the vault area. Sterile walls, thick metal doors. A young employee checked my ID, matched the code, and brought out box 247. When he set it on the table and left the room, Angela grabbed my arm. Mom, what if it's nothing? It will be something, I said. Your father was never careless. I opened the box. It was full of jewelry, necklaces, bracelets, earrings, rings. Some I recognized from Robert's mother. Some I had never seen. All real, all valuable. Along with them, a letter, in which Robert had listed the origin and approximate value. Angela gasped. Mom, this must be at least, I don't know, 200,000, I said, reading. According to your father. Her eyes filled with hope, dangerous hope. Mom, with this, we can fix everything. I watched her carefully. Fix everything. To her, still meant paying for Edward's sins. Can we sell them? She asked. Just some. You can get your beach house back, and I can pay the banks and Angela. I said gently, are you really willing to sell your father's inheritance to pay the debts of a man who abandoned you? She froze. Tears filled her eyes again. What other choice do I have? She whispered. I can't get a job with lawsuits pending. The banks are threatening to seize everything. I don't even own anything. Everything was in Edward's name. Exactly. She still saw money as rescue. It wasn't time yet to show her the whole truth. So I said, bring the jewels home. Think before you sell. Once they're gone, they're gone. 12. The quiet investigation that night. After Angela went to bed in her old teenage room, surrounded by faded posters and family photos, I called Mr. Peterson. Mr. Peterson, I need everything on Edward's debts. Every loan, every forged signature, every bank, every private lender. That will take time, he said. I know. Do it anyway. And keep it secret, even from my daughter. She has to believe she has to work her way out. May I ask, he began carefully, what your end game is, Mrs. Brooks? My end game, I said, looking down the hall at the light under Angela's door, is to save my daughter. But first, she has to understand what it means to lose everything. And that, right there, was the moment the game truly began. Angela thought she was staying at her mother's house out of necessity. She didn't know she was walking into a lesson. She didn't know her debts were already being untangled behind the scenes. She didn't No, the mother she had discarded had the power to solve everything with one signature. But I wasn't going to solve it. Not yet. Not until she learned the difference between being poor and becoming poor because you betrayed love. For the first few days after Angela moved back in, the house was quiet. She slept late, wandered around in pajamas, spent hours on her phone refreshing emails that never came. I didn't say much. I cooked, cleaned, and went about my day as if she were a guest, renting a room. On the fifth morning, I left a note on the kitchen table. Angela, groceries don't pay for themselves. There's a hiring sign at Miller's Deli, Mom. When she came into the kitchen later, she held the note like it was a summons. Mom, you can't be serious, she said. Me, work at a deli. I looked up from my crossword. You said you wanted to stay here. That means you help. I have a business degree. I can't just then find a job that matches it. Until then, Miller's is hiring. Her cheeks flushed. You're punishing me. I put my pencil down. No, I'm teaching you. 1. The deli job. By the following Monday, she had taken the job. 4 hours a day, minimum wage, washing dishes and wiping counters. The first night, she came home smelling like grease and onions, her pride as bruised as her feet. I made tea and said nothing. She didn't speak either, but later, when she thought I couldn't hear, I heard her in her room crying softly. Not the loud sobs of guilt this time, but the quiet tears of someone finally beginning to understand value. The next morning, she woke earlier, without my prompting. By the end of the week, she brought home a paper bag of groceries she'd bought herself. Thought I'd make dinner tonight, she said. Progress. 2. Edward's fall. While Angela learned humility, Mr. Peterson was busy tightening the noose around Edward. Every few days, he'd call with updates. Mrs. Brooks, he said one evening, it's confirmed. Edward falsified at least 3 loan applications using Angela's signature. There are enough charges here for the banks to pursue him internationally, and they will. They already have. A warrant's been filed. I let that sink in. Does Angela know? Not yet. You asked me to hold the news until the right time. Good. When she's strong enough to hear it, I'll tell her. Because I didn't want her pitying herself. I wanted her to recognize the difference between being a victim and being responsible. Edward had exploited her greed, not her innocence, and that's a truth that hurts deeper than any betrayal. 3. The jewel lesson. One afternoon, she came to me again, holding the velvet box of Robert's jewels. Mom, please, she said, we could sell just one of these. We could pay the electric bill, fix the old car. I stopped her. The electric bill is paid. Angela, she blinked. How? I budgeted. I'm not helpless. Her shoulders fell. You still have money saved. Enough to live modestly, I said, lying only a little. She sighed, defeated, and closed the box. I wish I'd learned that from you sooner. I reached over, covered her hand. You still can. That was the first real smile I'd seen from her in months. 4. The old trucky. Week later, I drove to the garage to bring home Robert's truck. It looked the same, worn but proud, with the faint smell of his cologne still in the seats. When I pulled into the driveway, Angela came out of the house and froze. Mom, is that? Yes, I said, patting the hood. Your father's truck, but I bought it back. With what money? I smiled. Does it matter? Her eyes widened as realization began to dawn, that perhaps the mother she thought penniless had been managing far more than she let on. She didn't ask again. Smart girl. 5. The rebuild. By spring, Angela had been at the deli for 3 months. She was saving, slowly. She'd repainted her old room. She smiled more. She laughed with the neighbors. For the first time since Robert's death, the house felt alive again. One evening, while washing dishes together, she said quietly, Mom, I've been thinking about going back to school, maybe studying accounting. I want to understand money properly this time. I turned off the water and looked at her, the same girl who had once sold my home without hesitation, now speaking about responsibility. That's a good idea, I said. Your father would be proud. She smiled, and for a moment, it wasn't student and teacher anymore. It was just mother and daughter, rebuilding. 6. The truth. Weeks passed. When the time felt right, I took her to the beach house. She thought it was for a weekend break, but when we arrived and she saw the familiar porch, she stopped in her tracks. Mom, she whispered, trembling, this is our house. Yes, I said, it's been ours all along, but you said I never said I didn't own it. I just didn't correct your assumption. Tears welled in her eyes. You tricked me. No, I said softly, I taught you. She covered her face, sobbing. How could you forgive me after what I did? Because I'm your mother, and because your father wanted me to. She looked up, startled. I took her hand and handed her a letter, Robert's final note, one I'd kept for this moment. Angela, if your mother gives you this, it means you've faced the hardest part of growing up, seeing the cost of your choices. Money comes and goes, character doesn't. Treat people and love as your real inheritance. Dad, she read it twice before collapsing into my arms. 7. The closing scene that night, we sat on the porch together. The sea was calm. The same moon Robert and I had watched for decades hung over us. Angela leaned her head on my shoulder. I don't deserve this, she said. No one ever really does, I replied. We just try to be better next time. She was silent for a long while. Then, quietly, I will be. And for the first time, I believed her. 8. Epilogue. Months later, Angela finished her certification and began working at an accounting firm. She paid off what little debt remained on her own. She stayed humble, careful, grateful. I transferred ownership of one small property into her name, the deli building. She cried when I told her, "It's not for the money," I said. "It's to remind you where you started." Now, every time I drive past Miller's Deli, I see her talking with the staff, smiling, sleeves rolled up, unafraid of work. And I know that Robert's final lesson, and mine, worked. Because revenge had never been the goal. Redemption was. 10 years later, the house by the sea looked almost the same, paint chipped slightly from the salt, porch railing polished smooth by hundreds of hands that had gripped it for balance, for hope. The sign out front read, Robert's Porch, a place to begin again. Only the world around it had changed, and so had we. 10 years later, I was 81 now. My hands trembled more than they used to, but my mind, thank heavens, was still sharp. I spent my mornings in the garden, trimming rosemary and jasmine while the sound of laughter floated from the porch. The foundation had grown beyond anything I'd imagined. There were now 3 houses, the original beach house, a converted apartment in the city, and a small farm where women learned to grow their own food. And Angela, my daughter, was at the center of it all. She had become the woman Robert and I had always dreamed she'd be, strong but kind, determined but humble. Every newspaper article, every award, every donation request bore her name, but she never once took credit alone. When journalists asked how she built it, she always said the same thing. It started with a lesson from my parents. They taught me that love is not about giving, it's about guiding. 2. The morning visit. That morning, Angela came through the gate carrying 2 coffees and a stack of folders. Still working before sunrise, I teased. She smiled. Habit. You know me. Yes, you learned from the best. We sat on the porch, the same spot where everything had fallen apart, once and been rebuilt again. She handed me one of the folders. What's this? I asked. Something I've been working on for months, she said. It's time we expand again. I want to open a new center, in Dad's name, near the old downtown bus depot. It'll focus on financial literacy for single mothers. I ran my fingers over the proposal. The title read, The Robert Brooks Center for Second Chances. My throat tightened. You're turning his life's work into something living, I whispered. Angela smiled. You and Dad taught me what money is for. This is how I say thank you. 3. A letter for the future. That night, while she worked late at the office, I sat at my desk and began writing a letter. My handwriting had grown shaky, but my purpose was clear. My dearest Angela, when you read this, I will probably be gone or simply resting. You gave my life a second act. You taught me that grief can turn into growth, and loss into legacy. When I let you fall all those years ago, it was the hardest thing I ever did. But it was also the moment I saw you truly rise. Promise me you'll keep the porch open. Promise me that every woman who crosses that threshold will find not just shelter, but dignity. That's how you keep me and your father alive, not through wealth, but through kindness, repeated endlessly. With all my love, Mom. I sealed the letter and tucked it into my Bible, the same one Robert had given me on our wedding day. Then I smiled to myself. Robert had written letters for both of us. It was only fair that I write one too. 4. The final evening. A week later, the house was busy with celebration. Robert's porch was marking its 10th anniversary. Women from all years returned, bringing children, families, stories. There was food, music, laughter spilling through the windows. Angela gave a speech on the porch steps, her voice steady and full. 10 years ago, this house was a refuge for me, she said. My mother took me in when I didn't deserve it, and instead of rescuing me, She taught me how to rescue myself. That's what Robert's porch stands for. Not escape from pain, but the strength to rise again. When she finished, applause erupted. I stood in the back, leaning on my cane, and caught her eye. For a brief second, the crowd disappeared. It was just the two of us, teacher and student, mother and daughter, mirror and reflection. I mouthed the words, "I'm proud of you." She smiled, tears glistening. I know. 5. The dream. That night, after everyone had gone home, I sat alone on the porch with a blanket and a cup of tea. The sea whispered softly below. I must have dozed off, because suddenly Robert was there beside me. He looked as he did when we first met handsome.com, with that same half smile that said he'd already planned everything. "Is it done?" he asked. "Yes," I whispered. "She learned everything." He nodded. "Took her a while." I laughed. "Took us longer." He chuckled and reached for my hand. "You did good, Antonia, so did you." We sat in silence for a while, watching the horizon glow faintly under the moon. Then he stood, kissed my forehead, and said, "Come walk with me." And the world faded into peace. 6. Angela's discovery. The next morning, Angela found me still sitting on the porch, a faint smile on my face. My tea had gone cold. She knew instantly. There were no tears at first, only a stillness that felt like reverence. She covered my hands with hers, whispering, "Thank you, Mom, for everything." Later, while sorting my things, she found the letter in the Bible. She read it slowly, her tears falling onto the pages, blurring the ink. When she finished, she whispered, "I promise, Mom, I'll keep it open forever." 7. The legacy lives on. 5 years later, the Robert Brooks Center for Second Chances opened downtown. Its doors bore a plaque dedicated to Robert and Antonia Brooks, who taught that forgiveness is the highest form of wealth. Angela became its director. She spoke at universities, advised women's organizations, and mentored young leaders. But she always came back to the porch by the sea at least once a month. Sometimes she brought flowers. Sometimes she just sat in silence, eyes on the ocean. And when the wind rustled through the jasmine, she liked to believe it was her parents speaking through the sound, saying what they always had. Lesson complete. Keep teaching. 8. The final words now. If you ever visit Robert's porch, you'll see women on that same veranda reading, laughing, starting over. And in the evenings, when the light turns gold, Angela sits in the rocking chair her father built, whispering to the horizon, "We're still here, Mom. We're still helping them rise." And somewhere in the rhythm of the waves, if you listen closely, you can almost hear Antonia's voice, calm, eternal. "That's my girl."